ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਲੰਡਨ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਨਿੱਘਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਕਮਲ ਇਨ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਰ ਮੰਗਲਵਾਰ ਦੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹਾਂ। ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਤੇ UK ਯੂਰਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਦੁਨੀਆ ਭਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ sangattelevision.org ਤੇ ਵੀ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਭਰ 'ਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ, ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਆਪਣਾ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਨੇ। ਆਪ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਪਸੰਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ। ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਪਸੰਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਸਸਟੇਨ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਵਧੀਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਏ ਜਾ ਸਕਣ। ਇਸ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲੀ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਟ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ। ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਇਕ ਸਹਾਇਤਾ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦਿਆ ਕਰੋ। ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਡੈਬਿਟ ਸੈਟਅਪ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਜਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਦਾ ਮੌਕਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕੋਈ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਸਾਥ ਦਿਆ ਕਰੋ। ਇਸ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਧੀਆ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ। ਕਮਲ ਇਨ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਾਂ। ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਖਾਸ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਕਰਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਦਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਅੱਧੀ ਪੋਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ, ਭਾਵ ਕਿ ਅੱਧੀ ਜਨਸੰਖਿਆ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ। ਸਾਡੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਮਾਜ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਨਫੈਕਟ ਮੈਂ ऐसे कई लोगों ਨੂੰ, ऐसे कई परिवारों ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦੇ हैं ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲੀ ਬੜੇ ਐਕਟਿਵ ਨੇ, ਪਰ women folk in their house, in their homes are kind of sidelined or they're not visible। ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਅਜੋਕੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਐਜ਼ women, ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਤੇ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਸਫੇਅਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਾ ਪਾਏ, ਇਹ ਸਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਨੇ ਸੀਮਾ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ MP ਜੀ। A very warm welcome to Sangat Television.
Thank you, Kamalpreet ji.
Yeah, it's really nice to, because you are in public sphere, I think it's important to understand how did you start, and like if we first start from your journey and then we'll come to the general conversation today. How did you start off?
Well, firstly, a very warm greetings as well to all Sangat TV viewers, and it's wonderful to be here with you and discussing this very, very important topic. I feel that I have been very lucky in my life because I had very supportive parents from a very early age, and I think when I was very young, maybe I was still in infant school, junior school, I became really interested in society. I was interested in why people had more than others, why people were wealthy, why some people were poor, why people were hungry. And I used to ask a lot of questions. And the fundamental thing in politics and in public life, I think, is the courage to ask questions.
Absolutely.
We live in a world where you have two choices, I think. One is to accept the way things have always been.
Absolutely.
The other is to want to change things because you see that something is not as it should be. And really in the world, things are not as they should be many times because somebody a long time ago made a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I became very interested in how we can change things, and it was in my junior school elections, in fact in Heston, I stood for the Labour Party. I think I was 10 years old.
Okay.
And I had my first experience of an election which we lost. It was in the 80s. But in that time, I think you learn one step at a time, and it is never too young to start, to have the courage to express what you believe. And I think it is very important to be able to do that in our families as well. We do have a culture which is very, there is so much equality for women that we experience, that we see. But sometimes as well, we can not encourage our women as much to come forward. We can not encourage them much to speak at home. You know, it should be the man who makes the decision.
Decisions,
and as somebody who we grew up, I had 4 sisters and a brother. I think as sisters we wanted also to be heard in the house. And I think these aspects of Asian culture is where we do have some control over. So I grew up really very interested in the community as well. I began doing voluntary work when I was maybe 13, 14 years old at school. And I used to do voluntary work every summer. And that was my desire, to be involved in the community. And through that I learnt much more about the world around me. We live in Hounslow in a multicultural community, and other than school and home life, there wasn't much else that was easy for us to understand. So my voluntary work opened up my world in the community, and I do believe that those seeds were sown then to understand the community, play a part in public life, work with others of all backgrounds. These things were very much at an early stage for me. And then from then I just became more involved. I joined the Labour Party when I was 17.
Okay.
I took on active roles at the local level. Not easy to start with. It's really not easy at all. Knocking on people's doors, being from the Labour Party, you have to really learn a lot. You have to develop quite a thick skin, you know, because people want to talk to you about all the things they're happy about, all the things they're sad about, all the things they're angry about. And you are really a representative of the party as well as being an active member in the community. So there was a lot of learning on the way, a lot of work I did, a lot of, I think we have, particularly for women and ethnic minorities as well, whenever you're in a new culture, you have glass walls and glass ceilings. And in different ways you try and knock those down.
Absolutely.
And as I have been active over the last 20 years since school, I've been wanting to knock those barriers down for others. Because I do believe that when we come through as women, when we come through as minorities, when we come through as anyone who has a different experience of life, we make this country stronger, we make Britain stronger, we make the decisions better. And so it's been an ongoing journey, learning through work as well, learning through my voluntary work with the Labour Party, learning through developing schemes to encourage others, train others to come forward, and always saying that actually we've also got to be focused on our development for tomorrow. I can bring people as far as I've gone, but I also must invest in myself to go further, even when it's difficult, because that also takes the community further.
That's true. Because, you started as a child, you said inquisitive about why this is that or whatever. What if the family backgrounds are not as open, where you are not, you set a stereotype or the way you've been brought up? We see families like for generations, this is what is acceptable, this is what is not acceptable. Would you think a child or a girl child or a mother of a girl child would do in that circumstances where, there are set prescribed rules for her to follow?
I think
for someone who's not as lucky as you.
No, it's true, and we've all had fights to fight. I think that every individual has to make that decision for themselves. They have to negotiate. Sometimes what is the case, and it will have been the case for my parents as well, that Britain was new, and in many ways you have to take your parents with you. You have to show them the world as well. There is a lot that goes on in schools as well that is also to involve the parents. So that what is uncertain, what parents sometimes worry about, sometimes for very good reason, that those things are negotiated together. Sometimes things may not be immediate. It may be that you cannot do all those things straight away. It may be that you discuss or you find different ways to follow your dreams. Some people don't get the opportunities straight away, but they may find they come back when they are older and able to be more independent. These things have to be for the individual to negotiate within the context of the family, within the context of the community. And even then, when you change things from the inside, you often do that by taking others with you, by sharing, by explaining, by involving others. So there is no one way or another way. There is no easy way. Every way, in a sense, is a hard way. Some ways are just harder than others. But what I would say is, wherever people see that others have that interest or that talent or that motivation, to see in whichever way that we can encourage it in others, wherever they are in the community, it makes a very, very big difference.
Also, because now that you represent a lot of people, you also go to the events and you also go to various functions. Especially when you go to our community functions, where, say it's a reception for someone from India, whatever, you probably would be, one or two of the few women around there. So when you go there, do you also, you just go there as a guest and say what you have to say, or do you also make it a point that they should gather more of their women folk, because the people normally who organize the events or functions, the women folk are not even visible. And if like I've been to some of the events where you've been, like either you or me or one other person who probably is a counselor would be there, and rest everyone just men. So how do you do that? Because sometimes when I go to an event, my husband would like me to come to the event because he knows that I like, as you said, I like to investigate, I like to see things, I like to have the feel of the things myself. So people look at me as if I have been tagged along everywhere. So how do we change that perception in our menfolk, especially in our community?
That is a very, very important question, and I really welcome anything you can do to help change this as well, because we believe in equality.
Yes.
It is part of our values, deep values. And
yeah, because every time the people would start, they would start with Guru Nanak Dev Ji's quotation where it says, "So kyo manda akhiya jid jame rajan." Why say something negative for a woman who actually gives birth to kings? And we always say that time and time again, and we always rant about the contributions Guru's made. But when it comes to putting it practically, you must have seen otherwise, isn't it?
It is that, and funny we talk about that, but yesterday we saw in Britain the birth also of a king. So I think we also have to see that the women asked to come forward as well. There is something very different, and we have seen this across all communities.
Yes.
In research done with women and with men, that women will come forward more when somebody asks them. So there is two parts to this. The first is the men encouraging the women to come.
Yes.
And just as your husband does, and you work together so much. The second is that women come forward. I do meet women, and when I do, I ask them why they don't come more. And they say they're not interested, or they say that they're not asked.
Yes.
I think we can do much more, and
yes.
I believe very strongly that this will be in all our interests. Sometimes it may mean sometimes the man has to do the cooking at home.
Yes.
Because you have to sometimes share a little bit more of the homework as well. And my husband is a very good cook.
Yes.
And he has to be sometimes these days. And but this is also about where we want to see for the next generation as well. What example are we all setting now for the daughters coming forward in the future, that they should see that there is somebody there. And I believe this very strongly. Male and female role models can make a big difference, because it will be really to the pride of the whole community. But it is thinking about those things. It's thinking about the nature of those events. How do we make them inclusive for men and for women?
Yes.
And in this as well, it's what's the role that we all play. So it is very easy because the men already know each other, but in many ways you need to make sure that women also know each other, that women are introduced to everybody as well.
Yes.
I am looking to, and we were hoping it would be quite soon, hopefully in the autumn now, to do more of women's only events too, and women's network events. And there have been a number of people recently who have said they would be willing to help. I do believe there is an important space for women-only events, simply because it enables women to talk to each other.
Yeah, it's more of a comfort zone for many.
It is a comfort zone because it enables people to meet and become familiar. So I would like, women get the chance to meet me as well, that we talk, that they say what will make the difference for them, that they come up with ideas and we can work together, just as I will be with the men. And through that we will see this sharing start to change things a little bit more. I think there is tremendous potential, and we know within the Labour Party we have, with Labour Friends of India, I set up and we chair the Women's Forum through that as well, because we had this same problem. And if we don't have women coming forward at every stage, we do not have that voice, not just of women but of ethnic minorities and ethnic minority women in our politics, in our decision making. And we want that. because then we will get the right answers for everybody in Britain as well. Now, I've been the first female Punjabi MP in the House of Commons. I don't want to be the last.
Yes.
So more women coming forward and the community encouraging others to come forward is going to be very, very important.
And I think when you bring this out, if we look at the House of Commons in general, still the representation of women is not what the population is, isn't it?
It's embarrassingly low in Britain. We really have a big challenge. We are 65th in the world. It's 190, but 65th in the world, which for something we call the mother of all parliaments is not a good score. And not just that, but we have 1 in 5, basically 1 in 5 members of parliament are women. We have more in the Labour Party than there are in the other parties. But it's not easy for a woman in any party. But luckily things are better than before. Before 1987, there were only ever 5%. It was only ever 5% of the House of Commons were women. And that has changed. The Labour Party has had what we call positive action. The Labour Party has had all women shortlists that have brought forward more women. And it made a big difference in 1997 when we had over 100 women for the first time. And so the culture of politics has begun to change, made it easier for women to come forward. Now in the selection processes as well, each party is trying to select more men and women. We have, I think, just new candidates, 49 women selected, 40 men selected for the next election. And also looking at ethnic minority candidates coming forward also. But this will be, again, you don't get to be selected without the journey behind.
Absolutely.
The journey behind is a long journey. And it can start at school, it starts in the family, starts with encouraging people to speak, to show their views. It starts in all those ways, and everybody can play a part for others.
I think it's also kind of resting with women to, as you said, that if they see that they have an opinion, and that opinion needs to be aired. I have an opinion, if I can't say it, if I can't say it to my family, or if I can't say it to my husband or my in-laws, or my close friends for that matter, then it doesn't matter if I have it's as good as having no opinion at all. So we need to, how do you think we go from there, where you think when the people are changing, the policies are changing, everyone is making effort that women come forward, something still seems, as you said, the back work, which you don't see. We just see a public figure, the face, but we don't see what has gone into it, making what Seema Malhotra is today, the 20 years of work. If a person, say for example, a woman wants to decide, from now on, she wants to go into public sphere, and she gets the help she would get from the family or the people around her if she gets the encouragement. Where is for her to start? So, for example, I would say, because you represent Labour, if someone was to start as a Labour person, what would be the basic thing? So if we go through the process, just for the understanding of people or women in general, where do we start?
If you've decided which party you are interested in, if you want to go down more political involvement, then I would say the first thing is to join that party. It's very easy to join any political party online now, and you can join the Labour Party online. When you join the Labour Party, you will be then part of the local constituency Labour Party where you live. That is where your membership will be based. And you can then be receiving communications from the local Labour Party. There will be meetings, events you can go to. Slowly, you can then become more involved. You could decide, I'm very interested in organising something on, say, my profession is law. I was talking to somebody whose profession is law just this week. I want to organise an event around legal aid. The legal aid programme is going through a lot of changes. We've been arguing against many of these changes. I'm on the Justice Select Committee in Parliament as well. We have been writing, arguing, saying that this is going to reduce access to justice. So you may want to have something like that, an event you invite others to, and raise the issue in the community. through the Labour Party you can organise and help organise these policy discussions. Other Labour Party members can come.
Okay.
You can open it up to the community. Step by step you build your leadership and you work with others as well. The elections are coming up. There is no better training ground than the elections.
Absolutely.
And I love elections. I love campaigning for others as well. The reason being, and I've been all around the country for even local by-elections where a local councillor has stood down. I've been all around the country. The reason being, it is a chance you get to knock on the doors of people in the community. You get to ask them what is good about where they're living, what do they want to change, what should they raise with the local Labour Party. And you learn so much in that. You also learn about communication.
Yes.
You learn many different things. You have some unpleasant experiences as well. People don't want to talk to you, but this is part of public life and it's not personal.
Absolutely.
It is part of the role we play. Because if you think about it, we thrive and we are lucky to have a democracy. We have peace in our society because we have a democracy.
Absolutely.
And that democracy is strong because our political parties are strong. And the political parties are strong because people are members of those political parties that they support.
Absolutely.
So this is the cycle in which we, as we grow in this, we grow the local Labour Party. Now, I have been working since I became a Member of Parliament on a number of themes in Westminster and in the community. And in that, I'm involving men and women in the community. But where there are where I feel specific reasons why I'm not seeing the women, they're not coming forward, I go forward in different ways. So I held policy discussion, just a lunchtime event with women, some with older women, others we are doing with younger women. This week we've just been doing events with young people, aged 14 to 25 in the area. They are able to apply for grants for up to £500 for projects they want to run. So we have been working with them to coach them on good ideas, encourage them to apply. And the number of women coming to that from different communities, Indian community, British community, Somali community, Nigerian, I mean Turkish, all of these as the boys and girls coming forward means that they will develop these civic leadership skills. So in the party you can move forward as a member and then the other things become more easy for you in your own time, in your own way. In public life as well, I started out being a school governor. Anybody can be a school governor. You don't have to be a parent or a parent at the school. And these are the foundation steps of public life. Volunteering, very important, wherever you feel. And many do seva in the Gurdwara.
Yes.
The skills developed through that, the contribution through that.
I think
also
most of the
can be
women
done
in our
elsewhere.
community, when we say that, there is so much we can do as volunteer, most often they can only think of is going to what we do in Gurdwaras, like doing seva, as you mentioned, doing seva in the Gurdwara. And most of them are, even if they are opinionated or even if they have their own views, the fact that they're confined to a circle in a house, like bringing up children, cooking food, doing the housework, I've seen people who might want to do something, but they feel that they're either so pressed for time or the situation because they're feeding the family or they're looking after the children. In all of that, how would you think can people like you encourage women to come out,
This is a good example. You mentioned time. Now, women do get busier in different stages of life, particularly young children. And I'll tell you a small story about when I started a mentoring scheme. It runs through the Fabian Society.
Okay.
And I set up the Fabian Women's Network and mentoring scheme and political skills classes over the last few years. The reason being that I understand and I've seen women coming forward and then when they maybe get married, have children, they step out for 1 or 2 years, sometimes they can lose their confidence coming back, or women who have been mainly in the home, raising the family, looking after the family grows up, then they want to come forward, don't know how. So sometimes the women's only spaces can help with that, to help with some advice, encouragement, the networking. Sometimes you can join the scheme. So women apply for the scheme that we set up. and we have about 20 each year, and they have a year's program. The network itself, we encourage people, help organize an event and do it in your own time. So you can do it if you have access, for example, to email. Many do, even my mum and dad now do, and you can do things now in your own time. So some of the negotiation is, how do you do something in the time that you have and when you have that time. I also think that even when you are busy, try and find one small thing you start to do. It may be in the Gurdwara, it may be helping in the library, it may be helping in the langar, it may be in any way in the Gurdwara. But also what women don't always see is the skills that they have bringing up the family.
Absolutely.
Just managing the budget, doing the cooking, sometimes organizing
the way they multitask. Absolutely.
Multitasking. These skills are people want in the workforce as well, and want in the community. And so find one thing you would love to do. Sometimes it can also be working as a teaching assistant in the school. Sometimes it can be doing accounts in a company if you have that skill as well, or you want to learn that skill. Whatever it might be, do one thing that doesn't take all your time, and time you can negotiate with your family, that they will agree one morning a week you are doing this, or one evening a week you are doing this. And actually the children often like seeing their mothers being active, doing these, coming home with the stories, sharing what they have been doing as well. So I think the negotiation, don't think you have to do everything at once. Start small, because in 1 year that can be 2 mornings, in 3 years that could be, in 2 years that could be three mornings. And the discussion shows as well, if you're interested in one topic, they could be 2-3 women could come on the show and talk with you.
And to mention that, sometimes I actually struggle when women have opinion. When I talk to them, they have things to say, and then when I say, oh, why don't you join me in a program, I find it so difficult to actually get them here. So that's what it's the whole thing, the idea that how to get them out, and I've seen women go guilt-ridden just because they think that they're taking time out for themselves. So, if we say that, okay, you are doing your housework, you're doing things for kids, you're doing kids for, things for your husband or for the family or your in-laws, but then you have to find some space for yourself. And the fact that, they find, or they try to find some space, I've seen actually women feeling guilty about it.
This is something that every woman has to work through, and I think you have to work out, is it my voice? Or is it from somewhere else? And where is the source of this? Because what I have seen many times, and what I have heard, is the pride that people have in when their mother is also doing something. My mother was a teacher and still is retired, but still does voluntary work. And she is very keen. She's wonderful. The skills that she had during the school, she still is very good with her grandchildren. Very good with going into schools now, and that sharing also with other mothers is something that is so important. And I think every time you do something different, and sometimes away from the family, you can feel guilty. Sometimes I feel guilty. I try to protect some family time. I live in extended family. I believe my duties to my in-laws are, as they are my family, as well as my parents and the rest. We have extended family. And I feel guilty when I can't be there, if I am not making the dinner when I said I would. But sometimes family is about give and take. And it is about supporting the women as well as the men. And I think this is where we also have to see, when you see the children being able to share in both of their parents' life, that it has an impact on their well-being. And we also think, what example will the daughters see for themselves when they grow up? So it is possible to be both very active in the family, taking duty seriously, active in the community, active within the faith community also, but also playing some part in public life, because we cannot change things without coming forward and making those small sacrifices ourselves.
Because sometimes I think the way the world policies are built around, and eventually I was reading an article which said that it's all the all of it is just masochistic. So the thoughts which come out, and the whole policy of the world revolves around how men want to control and all that. And if women played a larger role, probably in more, decision making, higher policy making roles, they would like to do things differently. Probably, if there are more people in parliament, more women in parliament, they might have decided a different way out for Syria, or different way out for, say, Iraq or Libya, than what men in general would do. So how do you see that? Do you actually agree to it? If more women are more in, say, policy making positions, the decisions that go out around the world might be different?
I think there is no doubt the decisions will be different, and probably the decisions will be better, because the richer the contributions to those decisions, the better those decisions will be. And what we have seen when there have been more women in Parliament is raising not just these big questions of today, the big questions of the state, the big questions of the world, of world peace, but also seeing how you need to take a different perspective on those questions. So one of the important matters that I know came through in the last government, when we would be talking about the armed forces, for example, would be, what about the impact on the families?
Yes.
And I have great concerns for the families of the forces that live in my constituency as well, for their well-being, particularly if the battalion are away fighting, and these are people in their own way who are playing a part for British public life in their service as well. And so, and often the women are picking up the pieces if the men have to move for their job. They are the ones who have to resettle, who have to set up the home, who have to look after the children, who have to look after the well-being, they are the ones who really are doing as hard a job.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the needs are very, very important. I'm also doing, I'll give another example of the work we've been doing recently. We had a report come out on women offenders in the justice system. And we know that women's patterns of crime are different. There are many examples of where there have been domestic violence, or men not giving women money. Then, as a pattern, as one example that was used, women then shoplift to feed the children. They're caught shoplifting, they end up in prison. And so some of the circumstances behind why women offend can sometimes be because of how they're being treated.
Yes.
And so the research has gone on looking at how do you stop that, and you often do that by supporting women in their community, in the family. And so you have to have those perspectives that often come when people talk to women. And I know for me that constituents have come to me saying it doesn't always happen, but they feel more comfortable for certain situations, certain issues, talking to women. So then you are able to raise those issues on the national level, which otherwise maybe would not be heard as strongly.
Absolutely.
So we need this rich diversity of men and women and all our different backgrounds in our politics at every level. To
balance out everything. And I think since you've been through community and you've seen women, how is it different from, as I mentioned, though the host, we in the host countries, the host population also feels that, there is so much more the women can do, but they're still, the women are much better off than the ethnic minority communities. What similarities do you see in, say, Punjabi community and other ethnic minority communities when it comes to women?
I would say there are many more similarities than you might see differences. There is something when women come together, and I've seen this through the networks we've run, when we have 300 women at the reception, different ages, different backgrounds, different cultures. There is something very unifying where women understand each other's lives, I think is incredible. And the sense of family and the relationship and role in the family is very dominant. I think within our Asian communities there is a stronger, I think, sense of the faith and role of the faith as well in our lives, and how that means you share time, what's important. So in different ways, certain things can be stronger, but the fundamentals of the need to be, the need for voice for women to be heard, the need for more women to come forward. I'll mention during my by-election how when I told women that I would be the first female to represent this constituency, regardless of background, that meant a lot to women. It really meant a lot to women.
Yes.
And it made me feel a greater sense of responsibility to bring women forward in the community in different ways. But also, women are going through the same challenges as often the main carers for the children. They see the struggles sometimes the children face in schools, and where language can be a problem for the children, they experience that more. They are working more with the children to make sure they don't fall behind at school. In the workplace as well, where there is inequality often when women are balancing looking after the children and being in the workplace. Flexible working that Labour was very keen on, and we made the changes in the law to make that easier. But making sure that there is equal pay, making sure that there is, if there is a need for women to be at home for a while, that there is understanding in the workplace of that, and arrangements can be made. Often there are, women are doing as well shift work at the airport. I see a lot, men as well, but also women, and juggling the family with that as well. And so recognizing that means that when you come to discussing with employers, how can we make the arrangements of the shift work just a little bit different to make it easier, where women are the main carers, maybe even for the older generation. We call it the sandwich generation of those in their 40s, 50s, 60s, looking after the children, the grandchildren, and then the elderly parents. So recognizing how can we make work for women as well is very important, and goes across all of the communities. I see that so much. So I believe that as we go forward, and something I want to see, the women's networks, the work that we do, there will be some that is in the different communities, because the cultural needs are slightly different. The language needs can be slightly different. The work we do slightly different. But across all of those are these common themes. And very much I see the desire of women to work together on these, and I think we can make real great progress working together.
With those challenges, how do you think the technology can help with changing times, changing technologies? How can women use technology to their best?
I think women can use technology more, and they are. I see this more on email, more on phone, text message I get quite a lot. And this is, I think, a new way in which women are seeing that they too can connect. It is, I think, also an opportunity where we have seen a growth on the internet of not just, in different Mumsnet and Net Mums. You have your own website as well. Even when women are at home, they can be on the internet. My mother-in-law has a lot of her friends email her, and she teaches yoga 5 days a week voluntarily. She's active in the community in different ways, but she is now very much on the internet, and it really is helping her learn more things. Then she shared those health tips, very interesting for, I think, our community. Herbs, how can they be used? Well-being, these things where these are being shared across the community. And so I think there are many ways and many opportunities for women to be learning this. Sometimes it can be from each other. Sometimes it can be from the children. Sometimes it can be just in classes in the community. But there is also a hurdle where you think it's going to be hard. But actually it's amazingly easy when you just learn 1 or 2 steps, and you don't need to learn more. Just as many years ago, the telephone will have been a big challenge. Then the telephone, the television, then the radio, these were all new things in their time. But now how much we feel these are easy for us. And now I think with the internet, with the telephone, mobile phone, these things are not, they're made now easy. And so
women can use all this to their own benefit.
To their own benefit, to talk to each other, to learn, to hear what's going on. And then to be, I think, able to have if there is fear of coming on your show talking to you, we can do 1 or 2 practice sessions where it isn't live, it isn't being filmed, but experience what it will be like. Because what I have found through the training we do with women is having that experience in those environments where you see what the studio is like, you see what it will be like, a pretend radio interview, and you build your confidence, then the real thing is not nearly as daunting. It will be daunting, but you will then not feel nearly as afraid of giving it a go.
With all, the whatever your journey, the way you've traveled, what have been main hurdles you've faced as a woman?
There are many hurdles, and there continue to be hurdles. I think it is hard when you are in a male-dominated environment most of the time. You have to learn sometimes, how do I have a different conversation? Because maybe the conversation you would have with a woman, how you would do it, would be different. What should I talk to the men about? I used to wonder, even in the workplace, where often I would be in a team at work, in the business environment, only with the men. They would be talking about football or sport or something, and it's like, well, they're not interested in my life. Why would they be interested in my life? As an ethnic minority woman as well, what do I have to share? I remember when I was young at school, we didn't have as many Asians in school when I was growing up. I didn't even know the same. I didn't even eat the same food. We were very different, and you have to learn about others sometimes before you can have a conversation with others. So this again, where I think just having the courage to ask questions, having the courage to share, having the courage to be different, and having the courage to be confident in your difference.
I think that's the most important thing. Yes.
You have the courage to be different. You have the courage to say now, even when now I grew up, I was born in Britain, grew up in Britain, but I understand what it is to be part of a minority community too. So having the courage to say when things will be perceived differently, or the needs will be different, as well as understanding the mainstream views, the mainstream needs. You have, I think, not something different, you have something additional. And this, I think, is where we all need to move to, that we have something additional to the mainstream. We are British, we understand British life. We are celebrating now this week the birth of a prince, the birth of a king, just as everybody in Britain is. But we have something additional, and it is additional understanding, which is part of what makes Britain stronger. Part for the Asian community, Indian community, keeps Britain's link with our home countries much stronger too. So we have additional roles to play. We should be confident in that, not feel we need to step back and somehow be different to what we are. Those were big hurdles, big steps I had to take. And then you build your courage, you build your confidence, you build your networks, you build your relationships, and slowly you build your profile, and then you become something different.
To be in a position that you are, surrounded by the men in equally active and probably more dominating role, even politics has all of that. Sometimes you get to read something about, women being, even someone in your position, still feel pressurized. Do you feel that pressure? Because the people around you, the men around you are more, either they're aggressive or do you find it intimidating sometimes? Then if you do, then how do you find the courage to go around it?
Well, in one way I feel very fortunate, very lucky, because when I came into Parliament just a year and a half ago now, there were more women on the Labour side. So in a sense they've had the harder time. They have gone through times when there were hardly any toilets for women in Parliament. And even, if a woman had a child, then it was something that the men didn't want to know about. The big battle that there was to have a creche in the House of Commons, it's just 2 years they've had now a creche in the House of Commons. They didn't used to have that, and there was a big battle. The Speaker, Mr. Speaker John Bercow, told this story recently. I spoke at an event with him for women from parliaments from different countries around the world. It was a big conference in Westminster, and we spoke on the panel, and he talked about this, how the men had not wanted to lose a bar in the House of Commons. There are many bars in the House of Commons. There was one bar they wanted to turn into a creche, and there was a great resistance. And he has 3 young children. So he had decided that it was important to do, because more women were coming into politics, you need to have for men and women, and I see male MPs picking up and dropping off the children in the creche quite a lot, that he was insistent this would happen.
Yes.
But it took a big change, and it took working with the men as well to make that change happen. And now I think whilst there is small amounts of resistance still, and some believe it should turn back, that I don't believe it ever will. Now, when I came in, I did have many more women on our side. There are still times, last week I was in one committee, and I looked round, there was only one other woman in this committee, and she was on the Labour side. 2 weeks ago, I went on a select committee visit to Texas when we were studying the justice system there, why they have been seeing crime fall, why they have started to close prisons, how they have worked differently where people have not been doing any violent crime or they're drug addicts, and how you work differently, those with mental health issues as well. And I was the only woman on this delegation with 9, it was 9 men, 9 of us in total, so 8 men. And you don't notice it, even they didn't notice it till we got there. And then they realised that we're visiting, we're talking about women in the justice system, talking about women in prison, and there's only one woman in our number.
Yeah.
And so it's beholden on the men to also change this. So you do see that, but in a sense, you have to keep fighting. You have to keep raising your voice even louder.
Yes.
I'll give one last example. This was a turning point for me as well when I was at school. I was studying politics GCSE at Isworth and Zion School, and it's in Hounslow. There were 4 women in the class and about 16 boys. This was in our sixth form. In the first week, 1 woman dropped out. In the second week, another woman dropped out. In the third week, another woman dropped out. In the final week, the teacher said to me, "You are not allowed to leave this class because I will have no women." And when men dominate a conversation, you have to find different ways of breaking in. And sometimes what I do still, even if it's a tough environment or it's going to be male dominated or the culture is more aggressive in one Westminster debate, I talk to somebody. I ask advice. I say, how should I do this differently? I need to be different. It's going to be a different experience to a debate I've done before.
Yes.
And I run through it in my mind. I practice. I rehearse. And in these ways, you have to always say, no point just doing something uncomfortable with. I have to find the ways to be prepared, put in the time to be ready for something different.
While you're doing such courageous, challenging work in the parliament and the communities, how does your family, your in-laws and your husband feel about it, and how do they support you in all of this?
Well, I have been very lucky that my in-laws have been incredibly supportive as well, and when we have functions that we attend, sometimes we go as well. My parents, my in-laws, we can go together. And I would say one thing has been very important. All my extended family on both sides, family is incredibly important. Sharing in each other's lives very important. And if I look for ways to make sure that my life includes them too, and in this way it keeps the family strong. And so if I had just been going and just attending on my own and not involving, then in a sense you create that distance, which none of us want, none of us like, none of us need. And I believe that politics is about being in the community, it is about involving everybody as well. So it comes with the culture of politics that I feel is very important. And it's the same with all the communities in Hounslow. I'm very keen, I talk to the children when I visit schools, and through that I meet the parents, and through that you have the multi-generations connection being involved. Now, it's not that it's easy. My husband told me, he was joking a little bit, but he was very supportive when I went for the selection and for the election. He only told me afterwards that he was really, really supportive because he didn't think I had any chance of winning. and then when I won, then it was the election, and then he was slightly joking, but these things are competitive. but what you have to do is believe in yourself, and you have to go for it. Even if you're going to lose 10 times on the way, eventually you'll win.
Yes.
And that was the moment that was meant for you. So, you know, I spend a lot of time with men and women going through selections, going through different stages, a lot of advice on the phone, a lot of coaching. I can have 2-3 calls a week about this. But in a sense, you always have to be prepared to help others come forward.
Yes.
And then, you know, the help is always there for you.
Both of you being management consultants, and now you're an MP, you know, and a top on the man. How does, you know, does it ever, you know, come somewhere in the conversation you're having, or does it in any way make him uncomfortable or make you uncomfortable? That, you know, because I've seen some of the women who are doing better than men, not better in that sense, but who are just slightly ahead of their men in public life or whatever. They start feeling guilty about it, and man starts feeling uncomfortable about it. How do you set this between you two?
Well, this is, I think, a very good example of where you've got to be rooted in your values. You have to be rooted in your life, in your beliefs. Nothing has ever changed at home.
Okay.
And, you know, still we have the same debates: who's cooking, who's washing up. You know, still, you know, it's, you know, all of those things are there. And he is very successful in his own profession, and I am incredibly proud of him. And I am very lucky that he is, you know, he has been very proud of what, you know, what we've achieved. And in this, I think what is always important is to be rooted.
Yes.
Never lose your humility. Never lose where you came from.
Yes.
Never lose what's important in life. Never lose sight of that.
Yes.
Family, faith, you know, when you have the strong faith, you know, these things keep you rooted.
Yes.
And in this, politics has to be a partnership. You know, I do not think it is, you know, my husband also said to me, it was a phrase his father told him, and I believe it very strongly. In many ways, you can go so far in life on your own, but then you need to have a partner to go even further.
Absolutely.
And you have to protect your relationships, you have to protect your marriage, you have to protect your family. Politics is not an easy life.
Yes.
But in that, when you know what's important and you've negotiated that, and if you stray, then the other person keeps you in check.
Yes.
It's the way to keep on track, and I feel very lucky that we've managed it so far, and I believe that we'll continue to do so.
You would. We're nearly at the end of our conversation. It was lovely talking to you. Is there anything that you would like the women out there to know, how to come out, you know, even the men in the community especially, to see that if the woman wants to say something, she gets her space, she gets her voice, you know, and especially if you go to the events where you don't see women, how do you encourage men to include women?
Well, I think we can do some small things. I think we could have events where we say to every man, you will not come unless you bring a woman, whether that's a, you know, sister or wife or daughter, you know, bring others forward.
Yes.
And I think this can be for you to challenge as well as a journalist.
Yes.
And we can see this, you know, this is our equality in practice. We can do this even if it's just come for 1 hour. Come and experience what it is to be in the community. To women who I think have a view, but they feel that nobody is interested. Well, actually we are, and other women are, and men are. And they can also write with their views, they can go online and share those views, they can come to participate in discussions. Do it for the first time. If you don't enjoy it, well, I always say do it 3 times and then average. If you enjoyed it once, and if you enjoyed it twice, then that is good. And you have to keep fighting that for yourself. And always think that as I come forward, others will come behind me.
Yes.
And I would be very, very encouraging of women to come forward to any events that I run, the public health events, the women in business events, you know, the events with young people, and civic leadership, and also just the community networking. Women are always welcome, and the more women, the better.
Good. This was a lovely conversation we've just had with Seema Malhotra MP, and I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. And taking it from here, ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣ ਲਈ ਤੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਉਣਾ ਹੀ ਪੈਣਾ. No one is going to say it for us. We have to do it, at least have that courage and do it, come forward. ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਵੀਰ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋਈ ਇਵੈਂਟਸ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋਈ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉੱਥੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਕਰਨ। ਡੋਂਟ ਮੇਕ ਇਟ ਐਕਸਕਲੂਸਿਵਲੀ men, you can, you know, it's not a football thing, but if you're doing an event, make sure that your wives tag along as well. ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਸੋ ਕਿਉਂ ਮੰਦਾ ਆਖੀਏ ਜਿਤ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਾਨ, ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਲੇ ਦੁਆਲੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਕਿ ਸੇਮ ਰਿਸਪੈਕਟ, ਸੇਮ ਡਿਗਨਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਭੈਣਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ, ਆਪਣੀ ਵਾਈਫਸ ਨੂੰ, ਆਪਣੀ ਮਦਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ। ਇਟਸ ਅ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆਈ ਲੀਵ ਯੂ ਵਿਦ। ਅੰਟਿਲ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਵੀਕ ਨਵੇਂ ਗੈਸਟ, ਨਵੇਂ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਰਹਾਂਗੀ। ਤਦ ਤੱਕ ਲਈ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦਿਓ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।